Hello everyone. Since poetry analysis can be a difficult and tricky thing to do and understand, I thought we would take a closer look at a paragraph of poetry analysis I did when I was in a junior English class at UD. Now, I don't want you to be intimidated by the level of observation or vocabulary in this paragraph. What I want you to notice is to look at the structure and the way the paragraph is put together. So just to give you some context, this is the overall thesis statement for the entire paragraph, so you can understand where the paragraph I'm writing fits in, where I'm going with it. And it says, through poetic means, the speaker comes to understand the ends of poetry and its accomplishments, as well as its ultimate limitations. Since the speaker holds poets up to the highest standard possible, God himself, she is able to discover the truly magnificent scope of poetry in spite of its boundaries. So in other words, I'm claiming that this particular poem, which, by the way, is a poem by Emily Dickinson, which are generally known by their first lines because she never titled them, so it's known as I Reckon When I Count It All, that this poem, by comparing poets to God, explores what poetry can do as well as what it can't really do. That's what I'm claiming. Now, what's highlighted in red here is the paragraph we're going to look at is relevant to this particular piece. That's what I'm trying to prove. That's what I'm trying to focus on in the paragraph we're going to look at now. Okay, so here's the beginning of the paragraph. The poem begins with a very surprising sort of list in the first stanza. I reckon when I count it all, first poets, then the sun, then summer, then the heaven of God, and then the list is done. The absolute precedence given to poets initially shocks the reader, since the speaker puts them before even God himself. So here's what we've got here. We've got an introductory line that just brings in and introduces the first 4 lines of the poem, which I quote here. Oftentimes when you're doing poetry analysis, it helps to start with a quotation of a longer piece of the passage, so then that you can talk about very specific pieces and people will know the context of them. However, I wouldn't quote more than 5 to 6 lines at a time, so if you're dealing with a longer passage, say 10 or 12 lines, you should probably break that up into more than one piece. This works here because the whole stanza's only 4 lines. Now, the second sentence after the quotation is basically the claim of the paragraph. It's the topic sentence. The absolute precedence given to poets initially shocks the reader, since the speaker puts them before even God himself. What's highlighted in red is the claim that I am now going to substantiate with analysis in this paragraph. Okay, I can't just say the speaker puts them before God himself. See, you can see it in the poem. My work here is done. I have a whole nother paragraph I have the whole rest of the paragraph to support that claim through a really close reading of the words that are actually there. You can't just assume that readers are going to see the same thing you see. So what we have here at the bottom is that you're going to start out with these 2 same pieces. You're going to start out with a theme, some kind of meaning from the poem. In my case, the theme I'm trying to deal with is that the idea that poets are as important as God. For you, your theme, your meaning, your idea is going to be the answer to the question you've chosen about the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. That's what you're trying to support your answer from your critical analysis. Okay, so that's your theme, that's your point. And then you're going to look at the poem through the lens of a particular formal technique. In my case, what I'm going to do in this paragraph is look mainly at language, use of language, and diction. For you, it could be something else. You could be looking at it through the lens of imagery, you could be looking at it through the lens of sound effects, whatever you choose. It could be something different. What's going to stay the same is that you're going to be supporting a claim about the meaning of the poem, which is going to be the answer to your question, with analysis and you're going to claim, and then quote, and then explain. And I'll come back to see exactly how those work together as we work through the rest of the paragraph. So what we have in red here is the opening claim, the first piece. Next, what we have in orange is in essence a quote. It's a piece of very concrete observation about what's in the poem. Whereas what we have in blue is the explanation. What the blue piece does is it connects the orange piece to the red piece. So we have the explanation, the blue, as a way of saying, look, this orange piece, this concrete thing I've noticed about the poem, supports what I said about the poets being more important than God. So let's look at what we have. The spondee in the first foot of line 2, which is the fancy technical way of saying this double emphasis right at the beginning of the poem, first poets, emphasizes their primary place. While, and here's the second kind of quote and explanation, the repeated then ensures that the reader does not miss the hierarchical nature of the list. Okay, so even though I've got two in one sentence, you can see that I don't just notice something about the poem, like, hey look, there's this double emphasis on first poets. I say, see, that puts poets first, that they're at the beginning of the list. And then the repeated then, so I'm looking at word choice here, and then I say that this ensures that this is a hierarchical list. So I point something out and then I explain how it supports my claim. And then the final sentence sort of wraps this up. Heightening the tension created by the primacy of the poets, the diction of the first line lends cosmic importance to the ordering of the list. So diction is word choice in essence. So this is wrapping up what I just discussed and is leading into what I'm going to discuss next, which is the word choice in the rest of the poem. Okay. This is a comment on the word choice in the first line. I notice reckon, which is the second word of the poem, and I look at two different definitions of the word reckon or reckoning. And then the conclusion is, therefore, the choice of the word reckon indicates that this particular list is not just a collection of random terms, it is a valuation of everything that is important to the speaker. So this is an example of a longer set of quote and explanation. Right? There's two sentences of quotation, basically looking at something specific from the poem, and another entire sentence of explanation, which is different from what we had earlier when it was really only like half a sentence apiece. Okay, so now when you look at the entire paragraph as a whole piece, this is what you get, and I've kind of color-coded it so you can see how it fits together. First, there's an introduction to the quotation, that first sentence. The quotation of the full passage in yellow. Then, every time you see a red line, that's basically a claim. Orange is some kind of specific textual observation. This is your quote. Notice that this isn't always an exact quotation from the poem, but it's some kind of concrete, specific, narrow observation. And every orange quote is always followed by a blue explanation, which is related to the claim. It's explaining how this puts poets first and more important than everything else. And notice that this pattern is repeated at least twice in this paragraph. Now, this paragraph of mine doesn't have a concluding sentence that kind of wraps it up, mainly because there's a whole nother paragraph in the paper about those 4 lines. Your paragraph should probably have a concluding sentence that sort of pairs with or matches the introductory sentence that it has. So you can kind of see the shape of how this works and the level of support that you need to have in order to prove a claim. And that's really what I'm looking for as you write your paragraph about the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock.